disposable income after tax. Okay. You have the rest of the components. I, generally kept autonomous. G, kept autonomous. And X.
Orang kok biasa sebelumnya merinding gitu. Jadi aku sering kali merinding.
All of this
Itu
assumed to
keinginan
be
nih.
kept autonomous.
Gak ada alasan tidak merinding, bukan gak dihitung.
Okay, for those who just came in, this is the next part of the thing that you have to focus on. So I'm just revisiting or refreshing your memory as to how to construct the aggregate expenditure equation. So all of these components, you must go back and just take a quick read through each one of them. So predominantly, if I'm not wrong, this is a calculation of y, which is our outputs. The objective here is to find the y. So what I suggest you do, if you get a calculation question, lay down all of this stuff first. So make it very clear, these are the items that we need to combine together. So the next thing we need is aggregate expenditure or aggregate demand. C,
Tulisan gue
I,
macam-macam.
G,
Bagus lah,
X.
Masa kalau tulisannya bulat.
And the last thing here is that in macro equilibrium, Y and AE should be the same. That's of course where your aggregate expenditure cuts the 45-degree line on your Keynesian cross diagram. Okay, so you need a whole bunch of this stuff put together. First of all, tackle the aggregate expenditure, which is the Y. Slot everything in.
Temanku semua minum bir mabuk-mabuk.
So I'm just saving some time here. Straight away, evoke the equilibrium equation. Y equals to AE, but AE is C, I, G, and X. I've taken all of the components and put them all in. So the rest of this is just mathematical manipulation. Let's assume T is T0.
Banjir air. Air sama sedikit.
Okay, just remember anything with a subscript of 0 is considered autonomous. So once you have this, the only one that has got y inside it has to be moved over to the left hand side. The rest you can just leave them there. In its expanded form, this is what you must remember. if you cannot remember any of the derivations, at least you must remember this final form. So that when they give you the numbers, you can directly slot all of this in to get your answer.
Aku bingung, kalau dia kasih nomor kita tahu yang mana. Ini kasih nomor, kita tahu yang mana aku mau kemana. Itu bang.
Okay, so it's more of how you're going to use this equation, which of course they didn't tell me a single bit of what's going to happen, but you basically suspect it's the same old story still. Let's say, okay, as an example,
I don't know shit.
okay, it could possibly turn out like this. So if you remember, if we have an expansionary fiscal policy where G says goes up by 100.
Ke toilet gitu buat aku. Perutku sakit juga minum terlalu banyak.
So in other words,
Oh, this ya, 10 ya.
Banyak nggak pertanyaan?
okay, please try to remember all of these things because this actually might form part of the calculations. We have an expansionary fiscal policy where G goes up. Okay. Of course, they may not just play with G, instead they may tell you that taxes get reduced. Okay, so you will have to appropriately change this. Okay, so let's go take a look at this. Anyway, all of this I've already scanned in for you. Now, this change in G, it does not have to be G changing. It could be any of these autonomous components that change. You will put through exactly the same calculations. So, the change in Y would therefore be this times the change in G. Okay, everything else does not change. In other words, if I have to literally write this out, the change in C is 0, the change in I is 0, the change in NX is 0, the change in T is 0. So immediately, all you have to do is to plug out the change in the G for use to see the impact on the Y. You don't have to worry about this because all of these guys are literally not changing. So if you substitute the change of 0 inside here, all of this will collapse. Okay, so it's simply just remembering the formula that you have. So the rest of it is just slotting the numbers in. You want to find out how much did the Y go up, but you have the change in the G, it is going up by 100. You have the MPC, which is your C1. You simply slot this in. y goes up by 400. Are we okay? Now imagine if you have to draw this out. We're going to take all of this information that you see. I hope you are done with this. Let's look at this in terms of the graph. So the Keynesian cross always shows y and aggregate expenditure. First thing you do,
Ini
45
salah
million.
gimana ya? Lupa kan?
Draw in your original AE. Okay, so what we have next is so your new equation, AE prime, is the same as the original one with the change in G inserted. So what you get here, you will get a higher level of AE 0 prime, but you see the intersection here. So the difference between these two AE equations is simply your change in G, which of course, if you actually mark this out, this gap here is the change in G, which is 100. But the gap that you see here, the change in Y, based on the numbers that we slotted in just now. So you should at least be able to see this both mathematically and graphically. Okay, that's it. We throw in another possibility. This one is slightly more complex, but in fact the final result is very, very simple. How about this? this, if you look at it, the G is going up by 200, the T is also going up by 200. You should immediately recognize this scenario. It's one of a balanced budget. You take 200 from the economy, you return 200 back to the economy. So this is a balanced budget situation, for which we have already come to the conclusion to this. Your balanced budget multiplier is the value of should be a value of 1, right? That's your balanced budget multiplier. Okay, so if there is a chance that they play around with both the G's and T's, you shouldn't panic. You have also done stuff like this before. So let's say we try and solve this one. Still going to need the MPC though. This one already scanned for you. So we'll continue to use our 0.75. So write out the equation that you should be familiar with at first. So if the G and the T are the only things that change, then the rest you can simply ignore. So in other words, the change in Y will therefore be this. They could allow anything to change. They could allow the investments to change. They could allow the autonomous consumption to change. But it's all treated in the same way. The rest of the variables assume are assumed to have 0 changes. So all you need to do, again, same thing. You have the change in G, change in T, and you also have C1. Slot everything in. Be careful with the positives and negatives. The tax is going up by 200. So the change in T is positive 200. But when you slot it into the aggregate expenditure, so this one actually contracts the economy. But the net impact we know is a balanced budget of 1. I actually, by looking at this, I know what's the change in Y. It is going to change by positive 200. So just because because you see the aggregate, they talk about the aggregate expenditure, does not mean that you cannot bring in the later discussions where we have fiscal policy changes, where we have balance budgets. So, but are we okay with this? No. Only one formula for you to really remember. Then everything else, depending on what the question says, throw the numbers in. There are a couple of discussion questions at the back of that chapter on both the fiscal policy as well as the aggregate expenditure chapter as well. So all of the answers are all put in for you. Go take a look. BBM is balanced budget multiplied. So tax goes up by 200, the G goes up by 200, it doesn't cancel away everything. You will still see the Y going up by exactly 200. Okay, the next thing that we want to look at is also a calculation. Labor figures. There are only two formulas here that you have to remember. You have your unemployment rates, you have your labor force participation. Okay, so what is unemployment rates? You should have this, okay? Now, this of course is also so in other words, you have to remember your labor force is the number of people employed plus unemployed. Now, all of these are rates, so please remember to multiply by 100% and the final number is in percentage terms. Again, just exactly like all calculations that you do, it is highly recommended that you write in the correct formula, put the numbers in as part of your workings. You can press buttons after that, and the final answer. Okay? Because usually you get marks for all three steps that you take. Labor force participation. The labor force now goes into the numerator. So I'm not going to rewrite rewrite this again. Your labor force is your employed plus your unemployed, which could be now split. You get this. Okay, give me a minute. Let me see if I can find something here. Now, individually, if you are given the numbers, it is very simple to do the calculations. You just slot all of the numbers in and do the calculation for either unemployment or labor force participation. But let me see if it's possible to play around with both equations at the same time. What I mean could be something like this. Okay, so I have got this bunch of numbers here for you. Can you find me the number of people unemployed? Now, this particular problem that I've set up is a slightly more complex problem as compared to just directly slotting numbers into formulas. Because you have to use both formulas at the same time. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, what do we have? We have got working age population, which is the denominator figure here. You have the labor force participation rate, which is the left-hand side of this equation. So in other words, given the 5 million and your 72%, you should be able to first solve for the labor force. So using this formula here, okay, so in short form, the labor force participation rate is your labor force divided by the working age population. So slot the 72% inside. You have got LF, which we don't know. This is 5 million. Times 100%. So your labor force, don't need to think too much. Just convert this into its decimal form, which is 0.72. Multiply. The 5 million multiplies itself over here. And you should get this. And the moment you have your labor force and you have the unemployment rates, you should be able to solve for the number of people unemployed. So the next step of the problem is the unemployment rate, number of people unemployed, divided by E plus U, which is the labor force. Unemployment rate is 4%. You're trying to find U. The labor force is 3.6 million. Same thing. Take the 3.6 million, go move this over to the left hand side, and you convert this into its decimal form to remove this. So what you should get so it should be 900,000. Okay, so this is a possible way in which you can see them combining the two formulas to get you to something that they want. But seriously, it's not that difficult, right? Because all you need to do is slot everything in, see what's missing, go solve for it. Okay. What else? One of the other things which I am not going to rewrite out again is this.
Do you want to use money for this?
How to create money in the system. This is, of course, inside the monetary policy chapter. Okay, so what we did for this. I'm not going to rewrite out all of the T accounts and stuff again. Remember the story? So this is something that you would probably have to perhaps explain as part of a question. Now, we start off with a particular bank. The question probably would have to give you what the required reserve ratio is. A certain amount of deposits enter the bank. So rightfully speaking, immediately the balance sheet should balance off reserves and your deposits being the same amount. But Bank A is a commercial bank. In other words, it will want to lend out money. Assuming it does not keep any excess reserves, all it wants to do is to lend out as much as possible. So it has to keep 10% of the deposits as reserves, which cannot be touched. So the other 90 will be lent out. So we said, this 90 that is lent out circulates in the economy, assuming the amount goes into a second bank. So this now becomes the deposits of Bank B, which again balances off with its reserves of 90. Same process. 10% of this will be kept as reserves, which is 9,000. The other 81,000 lent out. So I have literally shown you in Excel, if we simulate this many rounds, you will be able to see how much money is created. You don't need to actually do the simulation like this, although they might require you to draw out the T accounts first. No? There's a formula. Please remember this formula. Okay. So how much money supply is created is nothing more than the formula of the initial deposits multiplied with the reciprocal of your reserve ratio. Okay, that's your money multiplier. Something like this, a process that you have to explain. Are we okay with this one? The last one that is given to me, part of this we have done already. The calculation portion of the fiscal policy we have already looked at. So that of course is affected very much by your multipliers. But they possibly do want you to also theoretically discuss about this. So if you run through the story from previously, a couple of things that we said, right? Suggest you go back and look very closely at this table. You have expansionary and contractionary fiscal policy. Expansionary, G is going up, T is going down. Reverse this for the contractionary. The objective is for expansionary is always to increase outputs. Okay? Anything to contract the system, Y goes down. So we have already talked about all of this maths here. So again, do go back and take a look at the basic maths. But we also looked at, forget about the trade side, the budget side. If the G and the T's are compared against each other, you might have surpluses, you might have deficits. And one of the last bits of stuff, they didn't say, but crowding out. Just remember how the process goes. So the crowding out process starts off with us in the recessionary phase. We want to increase our outputs naturally, and so we employ expansionary fiscal policy. But this might end up with some sort of a deficit because you're spending more and taxing less. So if a deficit occurs, and also if the government borrows money to fund the deficit, you might see them asking the central bank to issue bonds. So lots of ifs before this thing can take place. Once the bonds get issued, they are competing with the commercial market for funds. So to do so, to entice people to buy the government bonds, they would lower the interest rates. But lowering the interest rates causes the overall interest to drop. That increase the interest rates, which causes lots of investments to stop coming in. Simply because when the investments look at the higher rate of interest that they have to pay, it's more expensive to them. So this is the crowding out effect, which will eventually reduce your Y. I have actually drawn this one out here, which is a replica of what you already have in your slides. Okay? So you see the AD0 shifting to AD1 due to the expansionary fiscal policy. This is the first impact that we have, which is this one here. AD will shift. But the second impact is because of the crowding out, when the I drops and the AD shifts backwards a little bit to AD2. So this one shifts. So you end up with VC. Okay, don't know if this will hit, but just in case. the last thing that we said about, the last two things that we said about fiscal policy, limitations. So there are time lags, there are three limitations: time lags, crowding out itself, and this idea of policy irreversibility. Once you open your big mouth, you can't recall the policy. The last thing, which is also theoretical, is this. This one I'm not so sure whether it will appear or not. They just said fiscal policy, anything goes. If it's discretionary, it is whatever the government feels that the economy needs at this point in time. So, which of course could be expansionary, could be contractionary, but as and when the government needs it. The automatic stabilizers, on the other hand, is two things: progressive taxes and subsidies. All of these are systems that are put in place. Automatically, when the economy is doing well, you get taxed more. So the T goes up, which pushes the economy downwards. Conversely, if the economy is in a recession, people earn less money, they will also be naturally taxed less. The T goes down is an expansionary effect. So it reverses the recession. So the same thing works for the subsidies, okay, in reverse. So all of this are the fiscal side that you have to take care of. The last thing. Is this idea of an output gap. What output gap are they referring to? I suspect it could be either of these two guys, which we did a very comprehensive discussion on. It could be an expansionary gap, which is what you see there. You might therefore have to draw out your AS, ADs. For the AS, you might have to have an upward sloping short run version. You might also have to have that long run vertical line. So, don't know, they only say gap, they never say what type of gap. So let's say if it's expansionary, somehow any of these things happen. So what do we say? It could be due to expansionary fiscal or monetary policy taking place. G goes up, T goes down, money supply increases. So what happens? You do the first shift, you end up with AE1. Higher price, higher output. That's the expansionary gap. But then we have to move ourselves eventually back to the long run AS. So all of these are standard stories. What do? Because of the excessive demand, the Y star jumping to Y1, we need more labor. So the producers, to hire more workers will increase nominal wages. But once nominal wages go up, you will therefore see the AS negatively impacted. So you go back and take a closer look at your basic supply factors. The price of inputs will affect your supply inversely. Price of anything, rental, interest, capital, stuff, all increasing will cost more to produce and will cause the supply to shift left. So that's what you see now. The AS will shift to your AS1, and don't need to tell any further story. That brings you back to the long run position. So it could be expansionary. Likewise, we have no idea. It could be contractionary as well. So, but it's literally the same story. You start off with a level that is lower, E0. Once the policy gets put through, the AD shifts itself to the left. So you end up with Y1, contractionary gap. Once that happens, reverse the story. You start to see less work needed, and therefore workers get fired, retrenchments. So for this, the employers will start to reduce wages, and the W going down actually has a positive impact on the AS. So this will cause the AS to shift itself to the new position, back to the vertical LRAS now. Okay, so this one I haven't scanned in for you yet because we did this on Wednesday. Did I? Alright. Yeah, we didn't. I haven't done this yet. Okay, these are the two scenarios that you should look at very carefully. See if you can go back home and try and reconstruct this by yourself. Okay, do the count. Write out the story and then draw the diagrams. Make sure you know how to shift. So that's the last thing I'll put here. Okay, so that's basically that's all we have. If you have any issues, just email me on this. Okay.
Give me a call.
So there will be three things that I will be putting up. The last set of notes which I will scan in for you. The last sets of answers to the discussion questions in 11 and 12. And also this Excel table which contains two things. The stuff about trade as well as the table that I showed you on Wednesday, where we had production and cost calculations.
Aku lebih suka dari trivia loh. Sisa paling atas.